Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna get started now. I don't know if you can see my shirt. I've got a Darth Vader, but it says I am your father. Okay, it's Father's Day, and as you may know, Revenge of the Sith is about how Darth Vader becomes a father, right? So it's very relevant. It's in Yana Dioma, it's the topic of the day.
So you planned this backwards so that you could do this one on Father's Day?
That would have been really clever if I actually had planned everything out. I actually was going to start this entire series on Mother's Day, and so this would have not worked out for Father's Day. But because I made sure not to have this on Mother's Day, it works out for Father's Day. It's all connected. Okay, so we are now in the 6th of the 12th, the 12-part installment, and this is sadly the end of the prequel trilogy. May or may not be my favorite of the 3 trilogies, who knows? But this, as much as I expressed my love for the Attack of the Clones last week, and I love the murder mystery that turns into the greatest war battles in Star Wars, Battle of Hoth, it is hard to argue against this being the best of the prequel trilogy movies. It really reaches what prequel trilogy does. The Revenge of the Sith really hits, like, it's firing on so many cylinders. It's really great. And there's a lot of really great content for our conversation this evening. And I am just going to let you know next week, since we're doing these all in release order, all of the theatrically released movies. Next week is the Clone Wars. I'm talking about the 2008 movie that appeared in theaters that I, along with some of you, may have paid money and saw it in a theater. So it was a theatrically released movie, and then after that, we'll do The Force Awakens, okay? All right, so any questions or ready to dive on into the sources? Great, we'll just dive right in. Okay, so here we go. If anybody does anybody need the sources? You know what, I'm gonna pop the link in here. Boom. If anybody needs the Safari link, it's there. And I'm going to screen share it. Okay, so if anybody has, by the way, all the stuff that I'm putting out, the Safari stuff, I'm just letting you know it's available. I'm not taking it down after tonight. It's meant to be available and for people to use. And Stuart, this is your first time. This stuff, if you want to recommend it to other people, they can not only take the same stuff, but they could do specifically only Rambam versus Star Wars stuff. It doesn't have to be Tanakh and Chazal. It doesn't have to be Bible and Talmud. It could be, how does the Rambam see things? How does the Zohar see things? And other sort of similar, modifications, if you will. All right. Okay, so here we're going to start towards the beginning. We have execution by sword. If people are familiar with the scene, so Obi-Wan at this moment has been knocked out, and Anakin and Dooku are continually engaged in lightsaber contests, and eventually Anakin's got lightsabers. Dooku's on his knees. Palpatine says, "Good, Anakin, good. I knew you could do it. Kill him now. I shouldn't do it." And then Anakin does do it, and Anakin there's all this remorse stuff, and I'm not going to get into that. Although someone could totally take the remorse and sort of the post-killing of Dooku, the post-beheading, and all of that stuff. But it is fascinating to think about killing with a sword. I could have included some biblical stuff about the various. I want to say there's at least a dozen and a half. There could be a lot more actions in the Bible that get the death penalty, but the rabbis are the ones who they specify sword. So in Mishnah Sanhedrin 7:1 we have right here, and because I can do this fine, we have here where they talk about four different types of court legally sanctioned killings, and one of them is hereg here. And so hereg is really meant by the sword. And then of course we see Rabbi Shimon, he's not really happy. Okay, I'm not interested in the Rabbi Shimon stuff, but the sword is important here. And then so that's just the general stuff at the very top of the 7th chapter. Now we get into, in the 3rd Mishnah here, the mitzvahs haneharagim hayu matizin es rosho b'saif kederech she'hamalchut oseh. So slaying by the sword was they would cut off the head by the sword, as is done by the civil authorities. Then Rabbi Yehuda is not really happy about it, but okay, they're disagreeing about how do you use a sharp instrument to dislodge a head from a body. But ultimately the main thing is that you see that they however this matizin et rosho b'saif, but you would use a sharp instrument, an ink, whatever. You would cut someone's heads off, right? And so that was fine. Now the rabbis continue. Let's see, clear.
Yes, and the whole process of Anakin whacking the guy Dooku's heads off was not followed by going through the entire judgment process. He just did extrajudicially,
yeah,
behavior.
Yes. So that
which is where he kind of messed up.
It is a yes, it's extrajudicial. It's in contradistinction against the way it should have been carried out. That's true. As far as so we can talk about both the manner of the beheading and then also the broader context of judicial, extrajudicial, which is clearly extrajudicial, and Anakin has severe remorse about.
Right? Yeah, so he already did it. It's easy to feel really guilty after you whack somebody else's head off.
Right. Well, it comes back at the end. Right.
The remorse is very important for events later on.
Right. True. It comes back at the end of the movie, which
tasty ingredient.
Right. So there's a little bit of a foreshadowing aspect to it, which we'll touch on later. Okay. So the rabbis go a little bit further in the Babylonian Talmud here. There's a couple of texts. There's actually a whole discussion on that Mishnah in the Babylonian Talmud. I'm pointing out two early rabbinic texts, probably from the late 2nd century, or maybe somewhere in the 2nd century, that really go into a couple of the verses here. And so the first of these on the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 52b, it's taught, and it quotes this verse from Exodus, that if a man smites a slave, yada, 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 he shall be avenged. So nakom yinakim. So this, nikimazo. So what is this vengeance? What is this? Any odea mahu, I don't know what it is. So when it says, I will bring upon you the sword of venging, the vengeance of the covenant, so heavy omer nikimazo saif, you must say that this vengeance is by the sword, or decapitation by the sword. Okay, so this is sort of the inner mechanics of how the rabbis are using scripture to figure out how it is that you could chop someone's head off. And then we also have Sanhedrin 52b, it is taught, Tanivata tiver hadam hanakim mikirbecha, you should put away the innocent blood from your midst. So basically, it makes this comparison. It uses a different mechanic of biblical interpretation. Malahalan b'saif, and just as over there with the Eglah Rufa, this broken neck heifer, b'saif umin hatzor, so just as it's done both with the saif and at the neck. Afkan, here too, b'saif umin hatzor, that it should be not anywhere else in the body, not with any other, I guess, sharp instrument, but with the saif and at the neck specifically. So I found that fascinating. Yes, I did not delve in right at this point into the judicial aspect. The rabbis definitely felt very significantly about making sure everything was done within certain parameters. That also is a lot of the other conversation in Sanhedrin, which I think I put in the sources later on. And if not, they should definitely be added. Okay. Any questions at this point? Questions, comments, queries, concerns?
Just one question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just a matter of curiosity. So I see there's this argument between the sword and the axe, right? Where where in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. So
yeah.
Maybe you know, or maybe you have speculation. What is behind the argument as to whether a sword or an axe is preferred? Is it hermeneutics? What's the correct interpretation of the passage, or is it humaneness behind it, or maybe we just don't know?
So the most honest answer I'm going to give you is I don't know. I haven't done research into the axe versus sword debate here going on between Rabbi Yehuda and the rest of the rabbis. I'm I mean, it almost sounds like it's this vaguely subjective, quasi-objective notion of the. I mean, Rebbe Yehuda's very first words are "Nivel Huzeh." This is not a fitting manner for someone to be killed, and so he says, just put their head down and chop it off. But the rabbis are like, that's even worse. Now, there's a certain amount of subjectivity into that, but I also find it really fascinating, which you didn't ask about. What is this? Kederech shehamachut osah. What is this like? What the civil authorities do? We don't know how they do it, but it almost seems as if they're saying, look, we'll just do what everybody else is doing. We don't need to make it all really that different than what everybody else is doing. Which I'm pretty sure is a thread that gets picked up in the Talmud of like, wait, but we're just copying everybody else. Don't we have our own manner of doing capital punishment? And they say, well, that's a separate conversation also. I don't think that was a satisfactory answer to your question, Stuart, but it's a great question. Stuart, I can't hear you. Can I hear anybody? Uh-oh. Can anybody hear me? I can't hear Stuart. Okay, I can hear everybody else. I just can't hear Stuart, right? Can anybody confirm? I don't know. Okay, so we're just gonna move on. Stuart, I love you. I can't hear you. I'm gonna move on. All right. Okay, cool. So we're gonna move on to, okay, this is, so after our heroes save everybody, we have this cute little thing when Anakin and Obi-Wan are coming off the transport, or the ship, I think they've come off the ship, whatever it is, and they have this cute little, the way that they're, okay, sorry. Stuart says the way that the authorities do it, Roman executions were grotesque display. Okay, I believe that. It's definitely a great topic for further inquiry. It is quite curious when you actually think about it. Okay, so avoiding politics, Obi-Wan and Anakin, our heroes, descend. They're coming back to everybody else. Obi-Wan starts to go off. Anakin says, "Are you coming, Master?" Oh no, I love this line. "I'm not brave enough for politics. I have to report to the council. Besides someone else, someone needs to be opposed for it." Okay, it's cute. One text that immediately pops to mind, I'm pretty sure I've included it earlier in the series, but it's such a good one, is this Pirkei Avot 110. Shammai used to say, yes, Ehel v'ahat ha'malacha, love work, usna et ha'rabbanut, yes, and then finally, v'al titzvada l'rashut. So don't hate acting the superior, but do not draw close to the ruling authority. It seems that Obi-Wan is taking this very seriously. I don't want to deal with politics. It's one thing to deal with the Jedi Council. That's cool. I don't want to deal with this stuff. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move on. I didn't have something good for this. I'm sorry. PDA, public displays of affection. So Anakin returns to Padme. He's been out to war, and she steps back, and he wants to give her a kiss. She says, "Wait, not here." And then he says, "Yes, I'm tired of all this deception. I don't care if they know that we are married." I really didn't have something good for PDA. I'm sure there's some good stuff. I actually really was like, at first I was like looking at Talmudic stuff. I couldn't quickly find something. There might be something after further research if someone.
There is. It's about the male is not supposed to go off to war in the first year after they're married, because until they've made babies, and don't ask me where that one is, but it's there.
I have that later in this, but I mean specifically about.
Obviously, I haven't looked at the rest of it. Well, okay, yeah, so but I mean, to make babies, generally speaking, you have to have a public display of affection of some form.
I mean, literally PDA. I'm pretty sure there could be some stuff about it. I really was hoping for something biblical. I mean, the biblical thing.
Yeah, but why would the rabbis care about a public display of affection? I mean, it's only a good thing because it's leading to procreation. Why would they care otherwise?
It's a great question. I haven't found anything that Talmud specifically about this, but I'll share something with you about this, Edie. There was something else.
I'm listening.
There's something else on Safaria that I found, which was like, oh, it was like a little essay on Safaria.
Ooh.
Actually,
I like Ellie's comment.
if
Sorry.
people want me to pop it in.
Yeah.
Okay, Safaria. It was written by Rabbi Linzer. It was like literally the only one on PDA. Public displays of affection.
I'm sure the Talmudics would say, the Lithuanian would say that they were Talmudic, but anyway.
All right, here it is. I'm popping it in. Boom. Okay, so that's the one thing on Safari I found on PDA. It was by Rabbi Linzer, but I didn't necessarily, unless someone can pick something out of there Talmudically. But I really actually was curious from the Bible. There's the experience where I think it's Yitzchak when he first sees his wife to be, and she falls off the horse or the camel, and then he goes over to kiss her, right? So I was thinking of some cute little biblical things where people are kissing each other, especially, you know, some of the first times that they meet each other.
They never kiss on camera in the Bible.
Oh yeah, they do. There's some cute little PDA going on there. So that was one direction I could have gone. Anyways, that's what I'm thinking. I could definitely include that for next time.
I mean, there is the Pirkei Avos where he says where it says don't talk with your wife because it'll lead you to talking with other women. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not kissing, but it is interacting. It could count.
There's a story of, I think it's about Buria at one point where someone starts to chat with her and she's like, "You're flirting with me. You shouldn't do that."
Right. She gets involved with the student, and yeah, it's a whole debate. Right, but I don't think that necessarily relates specifically to our PDA concern here.
Well, I mean, is the concern here more of like a secret marriage or about?
I mean, that is what's going on for Anakin. In general though, like, is it a problem? Is it a concern? Are there certain parameters to be concerned about? Are there certain PDA that's okay, certain PDA that's less so?
I don't think that she's. I agree. I think Steve's right. I don't ever get the sense that Padme's like, don't do this. We're in public. It's okay. Wait, you're not even supposed to love somebody. We're married. I'm a senator. Nobody knows these things. You can't be doing this because of the secrecy, not so much of the PDA.
Right. Right. Is there specific circumstances? Sure. Hidden relationship in text. That's a good question. I don't have anything off the top of my head, but if I do, it's a good question.
I think also the character of Padme is just in general. She's not a PDA type, if that makes sense. She's extremely guarded, and although obviously her emotions are true and genuine, I think that's what I got from the character, that she's that's just the type of person she is. She might not even feel comfortable with that in private.
He's more tsanua.
It's not necessarily that. It's just what makes her comfortable or not as a character.
She is.
She's an interesting character.
It's a different discourse. I don't think Padme associates with that, but I think it's helpful for us. She's more modest in that way. Right? I'm not trying to place halacha on Padme. I'm just saying.
No, she always covers her hair in public, right?
Oh. And aside from the Petronaki arena scene and Geonosis, like, she's pretty well covered usually. Right? All right. Anyways. All right. Moving on. All right. So, Edie, excited for this one?
Yes, because I was scanning ahead. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. So we have still during the sequence here, this scene between Anakin and Padme. Anakin says, "You're frightened. Tell me what's going on." She begins to cry. "You've been gone 5 months. It's very hard for me. I've never felt so alone. Is there someone else?" Okay. I was thinking of going somewhere with the "is there someone else?" That is a thread that someone could totally take up. I'm not going there. Of the sota, right? Because the sota really, the woman, the suspected adulteress, I would say, the sota is definitely a way we could talk about what are the, someone suspects their wife's a suspected adulteress, and then the rabbis develop all these different mechanics of, like, how do you not necessarily how do you know, but what are different ways of asking and all that stuff. I didn't go in the sota direction. I really just want to talk about someone going away from their wife for a while, for specifically war, actually. And as Edie points out in Deuteronomy 20, when you take the field against your enemies, yada, 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 eventually in verse 7, the marriage, okay, spending time, basically, spending time with your wife. Okay, so that's one text I think that's cute. It's literally about battle. That's literally about going to war. And totally separately is the Mishnah and Ketubot in the 5th chapter. This is, so the Mishnah was basically published orally around the turn of the third, like between the 2nd and the 3rd centuries. But we have Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel here who talk, and they're from the middle of the 1st century. And then later we have Rabbi Eliezer, who's later in the 1st century. So there are these things, vows, you can like swear off, you know, getting benefit from stuff, but they're basically, the rabbis say, even though a man might say, I'm swearing off benefit from all these different things. And one of these things as it pops up here is like, I don't want to have sex with my wife, but there's only so long you can get away with that. So Beit Shammai says, you're allowed up to 2 weeks away from your wife, and Beit Hillel says just 1 week. And then here's where it gets really fascinating. So Rabbi Eliezer actually spells it out. It might depend upon your specific, I'm sorry. It's okay. So that's one thing. And then
the purpose.
What?
The purpose. Why you're swearing off.
No. You might just swear off, like amongst a whole bunch of things you're swearing off. And really what Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are trying to do is limit, basically, men still have an obligation to their wives as part of their marital duties. They can't avoid them for that long. So then totally on a connected point, then it starts to go into how much, depending upon one's occupation, what they're engaged with, how much can they really stay away from their wives, as it were. And so ultimately we have all these different things, which usually are only within like a week or maybe up to a month. But then according to Rabbi Eliezer, for sailors, they're away for 6 months at a time, okay? Which really made me think about Anakin being away for 5 months, that he was away. Of course, it does not come up in the Mishnah. What about if you are out to war, right? What do you do? It just doesn't come up because the rabbis they don't have a standing army at their time. It doesn't even enter their mind, like, how do you deal with a standing army and stuff like that? You can be away for a year and a half, who knows how long. So it doesn't deal with the Anakin situation per se. Any questions, thoughts on this?
I read some I don't know if the rabbis say this, but just back on the actual biblical verse. I don't know if the rabbis reflect this, but I'd be interested in people's thoughts on this. That the reason that they do not want the reason that the Bible does not want people to go to war who don't have children or who haven't done all these things or whatever is because if they have unfinished business and they are not ready to die immediately, it makes them less than effective fighters. I don't know if the rabbis reflect this, but I did read this in Christian commentators. I forget where I read this in a medieval Christian commentator.
I wouldn't be surprised if Rashi talks about it, because also I think I stopped quoting, but it talks about if someone's like not really into it, like they're weak-willed or something like that. Is that included in my quote or not? There's anyone who built new house, new vineyard. Okay, but I'm pretty sure there was what I didn't keep quoting, but it keeps going. Is someone who's like weak of heart. They don't like. They're not really going to be into it. They're just going to be, dead weight really in an army, in a battle. I wouldn't be surprised if Rashi or someone else says something like that, but they're just not going to be effective. They're going to weaken morale, right? All right. Cool. Moving along. In a very similar and related fashion, we have being fruitful and multiplying. So again, Anakin, Padme, there's a lot really out of this conversation. Anakin, Padme continue, and he says, hey, you're glowing. I've never seen you like this. Something wonderful has happened. I'm pregnant, okay? So we have very early on in Genesis here, we have that God basically says, Purovu miluet ha'aretz v'kiv shuha. So be fruitful, increase, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and master it. Okay, great. And the rabbis from there another Mishnah is in Yevamot, which is Yevamot. So again, Mishnah is also it was published turn of the 3rd century, and then a man. So we can talk about the men versus the women stuff. The rabbis were very specific about the gendering of this. But a man should not abstain from procreation until he already has two children. Again, Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel pop up again, these mid-1st century academies. Beit Shammai says 2 males, Beit Hillel says male and female, which is really cool. It means Anakin and Padme, they're according to Beit Hillel, they're being fruitful and multiplying. And then we have all this other stuff. But really fascinating, of course, we have Ha'ish Mitzuveh al Pirio, that a man is commanded upon this fruitful multiplying, but not a woman. And then Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says, what are you talking about? Both men and women. Why should it just be men? And then I'm not getting into the Talmudic conversation of like how they came about this or whatever. That's a whole other conversation. But I thought this really was fascinating. For the Beit Hillel opinion of Purovu, Anakin and Padme are accomplishing this. All right. Any thoughts, comments, questions, queries?
Why does Maimonides argue? not argue, but it seems like it seems like Maimonides says that outside of having children, that it is that a wife may demand cohabitation from the husband outside of any reproductive capacity. So I'm curious. This seems to reflect a different attitude.
As far as what?
I don't know. It just seems like as far as saying like, well, if there's no children involved, then that's it. That judges that governs the relationship. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I withdraw. Sorry.
Okay. I haven't checked out the Rambam on that. I definitely think you read. I'm going to guess that you may have read too much into that. I mean, typically the way that the rabbis and rabbinic tradition has understood sex is not purely for procreative purposes, that there can be just sort of the relationship building component to it. It's not exclusively about making more. And I would go back and read Rambam. I don't think even him, I don't think he views it exclusively for the purposes of having kids.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I'll go back.
Yes, please do. Thanks, Stuart. Okay. We're going to rehash. This is something from Attack of the Clones, but we're doing it anyways, which is nightmares. Anakin has a nightmare, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we can go through the whole scene. He had a bad dream, and this is really cool, like the ones I used to have about my mother just before she died, so that's a direct connection to Attack of the Clones and his nightmares then. Padme says, and he said it was about you. They look at each other, tell me it was only a dream. You die in childbirth, and the baby, I don't know. Okay, so I use the same text as I used last week, also from the Babylonian Talmud in Brachot 55b. Rav Huna, son of Ame, quotes Rabbi Padat, who quotes Rabbi Yochanan Hara Chalom B'nafsho Aguma, one who sees a dream and they're really bothered by Yilech V'Turena B'Fnei Shloshah. You should go get it interpreted before 3 people. And what do you mean interpreted? This is really cool. I still love this line. I think this is just like a good all-time evergreen text. Rav Amar Rav Chisda, one Chalma de la Mafasher Ki Yarta de la Mikare. That if you have a dream that is not interpreted as like a letter not read, you get a dream of any sort, good, bad, or otherwise. At least open it. At least consider it. Think about it. Now, of course, we have Freud, who goes dream interpretations in one way. I mentioned also last week there is, I should have thrown this text in. I'm sorry I didn't throw it in this week, but there's that the rabbis a few pages on in the same Masechah Babylonian Talmud Brachot, they talk about that that dreams are a 60th of prophecy, which is exactly what Anakin here is experiencing, just like he experienced in Attack of the Clones regarding his mother, and here regarding what will befall Padme and potentially the kid that they believe that they have inside Padme's belly. Of course, We could also talk about other stuff about prophecy, dreams. I mentioned also there's a whole section of slew of pages on dreams within Babylonian Talmud Brachot. A lot of dream stuff, but specifically on nightmares, a little less. The rabbis do, I'm just going to share. The rabbis do talk about all these different things. If you see this in your dream, expect this. If you see this in a dream, that's a good thing. If you see this in a dream, it's a bad thing. This, blah, blah, blah. All these different permutations. Someone probably has actually gone through and counted up all the different things you might see in your dreams and whether they're good, bad, or ugly. So I have not done that tallying up, but some intrepid, curious person wants to do it. Edie, you got something?
Yeah, pretty obvious. I would be curious to take this in a whole different space.
Yep.
And from a relationship and communication perspective, he's trying to distract her by, oh, look at this really cute old trinket you're wearing while you're sleeping in a bathrobe with pearls on it is beyond me. But and she's like, how long does it take before we can be honest with each other? Dreams is cool. I think that's an amazing thing, and I'm not dismissing it. But I actually, in my attempt to go, oh crap, what is this movie? I don't even remember it. So I was skipping through it, and I'm like, wow. Because from a relationship perspective, and I had a congregant just hit their 51st anniversary. How long does it take before you can be honest with your partner, where you can show them the icky bits of your soul or the icky bits that are showing up in your dreams? And that's a whole different thing, and I have no clue if there's anything about that. Because, of course, that doesn't actually have a darn thing to do with procreation and what else are women for. But it's that whole, wow, that's an interesting thing. Where does communication happen? Where you don't have to be afraid of showing yourself, where you can be vulnerable. And again, that's totally off topic from what the whole dream thing is, because the dream thing is his whole impetus for the rest of the movie, which is amazing. But from a whole, what else is in our literature about that? Got any answers?
Not off the top of my head, but I do have, 5 years ago, I made a relationship source stuff, not on Safaria, unfortunately. That was before I had drinking the Safaria juice. But I have a PDF somewhere, so if anybody's interested, let me know. I'll send it to you, Edie.
Please do.
Yeah, so on relationships in general. I don't know, it's a good question specifically on the topic of vulnerability in relationships. It's a good question.
Thank you.
I want to go, having watched the first the episode 1 over the weekend with my daughter. I want to go on that insight. Isn't the entire relationship of Anakin and Padme governed by deception? Because she exercises deception the first time they meet. She poses as a handmaiden, not the queen.
That's clever, but at the same time, when they do meet, he meets her as Padme. There's no, I want to say hubris or whatever, no arrogance around her.
It's not about him. When she's posing as someone else, it's not about him.
Right. He meets Padme as Padme, and not so much like. And then when they're on Tatooine, he begins to develop a relationship with Padme, not as Queen Amidala, but as Padme, and that's when he creates that Japor snippet for her. Is when they're on Tatooine, he gives it to her. So it's as that more authentic relationship, not as her as Queen Amidala.
Because he's meeting her as the person she is, as opposed to the office that she holds and has to act in. So while there's deception about what office she also holds, it's not necessarily deception about who she is I think the point.
Yeah.
I think that's a great distinction. Great insights.
Yeah. Also, Phantom Menace. I've never heard anybody else say this, but I think it's a great movie to introduce kids to. So go you, Stuart. That's good. All right.
Can I say something else about this scene that I think is interesting? Because last week we specifically talked about how when he was having the nightmares about his mother, he said Jedi don't have nightmares. And you were like, oh, I wonder if that's a thing. But here he specifically says it was only a dream. Like he's like totally backed off, or someone has backed off from the Jedi don't have nightmares, right?
Oh,
like,
Vera, that's cool.
Retcon the Jedi don't have nightmares situation. He's like, oh, I guess I'm having nightmares, or right? What's that about?
But that also goes back to not just that, but it goes back to how long before we can be honest with each other.
Right.
Because he does this reflexive wall up. No, I'm big, cool, strong. I have a lightsaber. to admitting, you know, he drools in his sleep and he has bad dreams. Sorry, adding that bit.
I kind of take it too, though, like from a Wiccan perspective. So dreams and nightmares are vastly different things in a Wiccan perspective. Also, there's a reluctance to tell anyone about a nightmare because of the speaking it into existence.
What was the last few words?
So like if you're speaking it into existence, so if he verbalizes the nightmare, which is nightmares are never, by their very definition, it's a bad thing. So you don't want to tell somebody about that because you could be speaking it into existence.
That's interesting for this because it does come to pass. And I mean, we kind of see it as, oh, it's forced prophecy or whatever, but that's kind of an interesting way to go with it because by being afraid of that outcome, combined with the guilt of losing control from his previous fear of the nightmares about his mother, that pushes him farther down the forced path and does actually bring about that. And so maybe in a way sharing this, I mean, I guess if he didn't share it, he'd probably just boil up the fear even more inside. So it probably wouldn't make a difference either way. But still, it is like he is in a way speaking it into existence because he does bring it about. So that's interesting.
But by the way, on the subject of dreams, and Drew, you mentioned you don't know if someone in the Talmud has, you know, put together like a like a dream dictionary, if you will. Yes. But if you actually look at the Coptic translation of the Bible, and you'll see the translation, which is the ancient Egyptian and Greek letters, Coptic, for Khartoumim is Shesper Ankh, which is scribe of the house of life. So these people, when Pharaoh in Genesis goes to his diviners to interpret his dreams, these are actually people who read dream dictionaries. And if you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, you can see these dictionaries, you know, with the pictures and then the interpretation next to it.
Oh, cool. It's crazy. That's really cool. All right. Cool. By the way, if anybody's interesting. I hope you're all interested, but interested. I did update the sources with this right here. Okay, it's 1/60th that, dream is 1/60th of prophecy. It's there, okay. Unfortunately, I do not have something for the next thing, which is attachment and fear of loss. Careful you must be when sensing the future, Anakin, the fear of loss is a path of dark side. I won't let these visions come true, like, as if Anakin has any power over this. Death is a natural part of life. That's a great piece to pick up on. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not. Attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of greed that is. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Literally, this scene right here has so much. I mean, literally one could do an entire conversation around this and bring in different texts. And this would also be really interesting also for the whole passing on to death stuff. So, cool. Unless anybody has anything that comes to mind with this one. Cool. Yeah.
Psalm 90, I think, comes to mind, where it sort of begins with some angst of what sounds like what you expect from someone who's, you know, dealing with mortality. But then the prayer part of it is not like make us live longer. The prayer part is like teach us to use our lives productively. But there's a lot of biblical stories which could be interpreted as like, right, the Garden of Eden could be interpreted as like dealing with mortality and that, like, so there's a lot of possibilities, but
all right, I like that. 90. It's good.
Yeah,
there is something to be said for a really it says bring your dream to 3 people, Anakin brought it to 2, Yoda and Palpatine. I think Star Wars there's yeah, really interesting.
Well, it goes back to if Anakin had felt safe bringing his frightening things to the council. He didn't feel it was a safe place for him because they'd rejected him as far as he was concerned and his goals since he was, a little kid.
Yeah, I mean,
That's interesting.
I think he really is really concerned about this. A, the vulnerability to Padme, and B, I mean, I almost kind of wonder that the Wiccan idea that Stephanie mentioned, the fear that it could bring it into.
If you speak it.
Yeah. So that's a.
Can you argue that like speaking into existence could actually mesh with that portion of the dreams or portion of prophecy? Like it could be like a similar idea. Like, I mean, have this dream for a reason. If you speak it, you give it power. But then also, some dreams really are prophetic, regardless of who you are.
Right. I mean, so far the dreams that we see him having in both Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, they are basic. They are prophecies, and the Jedi do have to some degree this ability to see into the future, and so that definitely connects, which connects us right to prophecies. Hey, how about that? Okay, so I brought this thing where Obi-Wan says, with all due respect, Master, is he, like, Anakin, not the chosen one? Is he not to destroy the Sith and bring loss to the Force? So the prophecy says. And Mace Windu is really into the prophecy stuff. And Yoda says, a prophecy that misread could have been, and Obi-Wan says, he will not let me down. He never has. I could have gone into a lot of prophecy stuff because the Bible's chock full of prophecies. The rabbis talk about prophecy a lot, although they talk about it a little bit differently. They talk about when prophecy ended. It only belongs with fools and children now. But they definitely believe that there were prophecies, and there's a lot we could talk about. It could literally be the subject of an entire series of topics about prophecy, or even more specifically, biblical prophecies. We could talk about post-Talmudic explanations, especially Rambam and Maimonidean theories and views on prophecy specifically. And even better, what about sort of false prophecies, right? Things that, good things are supposed to happen, bad things may or may not happen, right?
And also very cleverly how Spinoza uses this to smash the entire Bible in a very very sneaky way. Theological political treatise, whatever.
How does he? What is it? TPP? What is it called? The PTT?
He basically says that if dreams are manifested through prophecies, so then sometimes dreams are unclear. So therefore prophecies are unclear. So therefore the prophets are unclear. Therefore the people understand them. Therefore nobody really understands prophecy, and therefore we have no record of prophecy ever.
Oh wow! Okay.
I love the logic.
Incredibly skeptical. Incredibly skeptical. Yeah, but so as far as the Bible has prophecies, and then I think I might have mentioned previously, what is it? Is it in Master and Apprentice where they do some stuff with Qui-Gon and getting into prophecies? Is that in Master and Apprentice? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not going to call it retconning, but there's some stuff with Qui-Gon, how he gets really into prophecy stuff, old Jedi prophecies, and he also gets his master Count Dooku into it. But yeah, so they basically continue to develop more prophecies within it's not just this one prophecy, just to give this scene context. It's not like there's just this one old Jedi prophecy, but there's lots of old Jedi prophecies that develop later on. Okay. All right. Power. I didn't have anything for this, but I'm sure there's good stuff for power. This great scene. Remember back to your early teachings, Anakin, all those who gain power are afraid to lose it, even the Jedi. The Jedi use their power for good. Good is a point of view, Anakin. Jedi point of view is not the only valid one. The Dark Lords of the Sith believe in security and justice also, yet they are considered by the Jedi to be evil. From a Jedi's point of view, the Sith and Jedi are similar in almost every way, including the quest for greater power. The difference between the two is the Sith are not afraid of the dark side of the Force. That is why they are more powerful. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. I didn't have any really great thing about power, but this is such a really fascinating dialogue. But I'm going to move on. Creating life. Did you hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? He could create Force. Again, I think I talked about it last time, about the ability for there's some sort of, I don't know, it's not exactly sorcery, but something akin to sorcery, where some of the rabbis were able to create a person. Rava was reported to have created this golem that he would send to his friend's house and clean up for him, whatever. I'm not going to go into it. But those are such fascinating scenes, even if I didn't have corresponding text for them. But now I do have some stuff, which is Anakin says, "You know the dark side?" Anakin, if one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects, not just the dogmatic, narrow view of the Jedi. If you wish to become a complete and wise leader, you must embrace a larger view of the Force. Be careful of the Jedi, Anakin. They fear you, and time they will destroy and train. Okay, but I'm really more interested in the, if you wish to become understanding things that are basically beyond what you're supposed to get into. So one that immediately popped to mind was in Pirkei Avot again. This whatever, it's from basically first few centuries of the Common Era. And we have Rebbe Elazar, not to be confused with what we saw Rebbe Eliezer earlier, but one of the things he says is V'da ma tashiv le'epikuros. Know how to answer an Epicurean. Knowing what to answer, you could just respond to them. It doesn't really mean that you like actually go into and believe all their ways and study all of them, but to some degree you need to know what their stuff is. But beyond this, I find this even more fascinating, more relevant, which is from Sanhedrin 68a, also Babylonian Talmud. So when Rebbe Eliezer, not Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Eliezer got sick, Rebbe Akiva went to visit him. All this stuff, there's a whole much longer story of all these different things they're talking about. But one of the things that pops up in this conversation is that Rebbe Eliezer is saying, I taught 300 halachot, some say 3,000, with regard to the planting of cucumbers. But no one has ever asked me about anything. Hundreds, if not thousands of laws regarding cucumbers. No one asked me a thing, although Akiva did, one person. And here's the story. Once he and I were walking along the way, he said to me, my teacher, teach me about the planting of cucumbers. And I said, one statement of sorcery, and the entire field became filled with cucumbers. He said to me, my teacher, you've taught me about planting them. What about uprooting them? I said one thing, and they were all gathered to one place. So this is really fascinating, I have to tell you, because it's, the rabbis talk about how, it's in the Bible, you're not supposed to be practicing this stuff, okay? You're not supposed to do it, it's bad, it's verboten. And then, so it's in Exodus, and then it's more expanded on Deuteronomy, and the rabbis in Sanhedrin, both Mishnah, Seth, and of course the Babylonian Yerushalmi Talmud, then say, well, here are all the different ways that you're not supposed to be doing all these things. But Rebbe Eliezer is the only one that we actually see, like literally performing this sorcery, and he's supposed to know hundreds, if not thousands, of all these little particulars, and he's able to do it, right? He's able to demonstrate to Rebbe Akiva, this is how you do it.
No, he said he did.
Right, he said one word, boom, they were created. He said another word, boom,
no, they said that they did. He didn't say, and I saw that actually happen magically.
Right, so
I'm being literal on you.
He can say he didn't do the magic, but he did it in a legal way, in a legal non-sorcery way. It definitely seems as if...
Okay, that's a fair one.
Right? It definitely makes it seem as if Rebbe Eliezer really actually practiced the forbidden sorcery, right? And what? Okay, I'm going to go say one more thing, which is my cute little connection that I've never seen anybody else say or write, but there's one of the top 10 scenes in the Babylonian Talmud. I would put it in the top, it's just one of the most popular, which is, I think it's in Bava Metzia, but it's the story of Tanur Shel Achnai, the Achnai oven, where there's this whole debate between Rebbe Eliezer and the others, really Rebbe Yoshua. And Rebbe Eliezer is super duper determined to say that this Tanur Shel Achnai is pure, and the other sages say it's impure. And he says, if heaven is going to agree with me, this tree is going to uproot itself all the way over there, and it does. And this river will change its course, and it does. And Well, these are really fascinating, because if you know that he can move cucumbers with words, why can't he move trees with words? Or the way that a river flows with words? Why can't he be using the same knowledge of kishuf, of magic, sorcery, for also, getting his way? I don't know. I've never seen anybody actually talk about that before, but I just think it's a really fascinating one, these two Gemaras. Okay. Pickle themselves for later. Okay. Yes, Stevie.
Yeah, I've seen this Gemara before. I've never seen an interpretation of it being deliberate sorcery. right? He's saying, I've like studied so much stuff. There's like this pent up energy. And when finally someone asked me about it, I said the first, law, like it says one word, but or one thing, right? I said one thing of the thousands that I had been prepared to talk about. And after I said the first thing, like it all started to happen. And then he asked me about, some other thing. And once I started describing the rules about that, like stuff started to happen. Describing it as sorcery is a very different perspective that I'd never considered before. And like,
so I can speak from experience, but in Cheder, when we studied this was interpreted as absolutely 100% sorcery, and that this was actually done. And the rabbi introduced this with this being proof that Chazal knew all about science and technology and all of these both occult and scientific concepts, but did not share them with the world because for whatever reason it was prohibited. But I can tell you that normatively in the religious world, this is interpreted as this is what Rabbi Eliezer did. That he performed this task.
Yeah, that's fair. It's also, like I said, I don't know that anybody usually connects this text right here with that Baba Messiah thing. That's something different, right? All right. Moving along. Okay. All right, Edie, you're gonna love this. So this is we got towards the end of the movie. Palpatine, I give up, help me, I'm weak. Okay, so and Mace Windu, he's got his saber, and Palpatine's done all the Force lightning, and his Mace Windu's got it shot back at him. You Sith disease, I'm gonna end this once for all. Anakin says, you can't kill him, Master, he must stand trial, right? He killed Dooku at the beginning of the movie with his lightsabers. He felt remorse. It needs to be done not extrajudicially. And now Anakin says, you have to do this by trial. I messed up earlier. You have to do this right. He has too much control.
Do what I say, not what I do. One.
He learned his
yes. Two, that's a different view. And two, we're all immortal until we're not. Well, we don't do Mishnah until we do. Now it's convenient for the purpose of my story. Don't kill him just yet. Something else good for whatever purpose might happen.
I would say the convenience is not with Anakin, but with Palpatine.
Exactly.
Any in the movie, Palpatine says, I know you want to go through the courts. Just kill Dooku. We don't need him to tell anybody anything. Just kill him. Now when it's me, Palpatine, who's on the receiving end.
Actually facing the end. Oh, wait, no, it's not I'm going to talk. It's give me another 5 minutes to figure something else out.
Right. He just doesn't want to be killed by them because he knows
this minute.
The Jedi are the ones who could kill him, but
give him 5 more minutes, he might get away.
I don't think he's even at that much danger of being killed right there. I mean, he comes up with the power as soon as he changes. So I think the whole thing is because he allegedly sees all this stuff in the future, he knows that to get Anakin to turn, he needs to make him kill and feel remorse later and then save him there so that he crosses this point of no return. And so he's playing that wounded person to get Anakin to make that choice to stop Mace. And then as soon as he's crossed that, now he can just unleash his power because he knows he can take him. So it is absolutely at the convenience of Palpatine. And it is the other way that maybe we could twist this around too is say that Anakin in both situations chooses the wrong choice to make. Because obviously the first one being extrajudicial is absolutely wrong. And we could say, okay, extrajudicial for the second one is also wrong, but who's the head of the system who has corrupted that system? Palpatine. So you might be able to make an argument that the system is no longer trustworthy because Palpatine is actually in the system. Dooku was separate, who could be tried by a system. Palpatine is at the head of that. Now, he probably, especially with the Jedi Council involved, probably still could have had that trial. So I don't know that I fully buy into that argument, but I could also see going that way as Anakin making the wrong choice in both situations because the Emperor is leading him down this path of fear, and that fear is driving both of those. And that, yes, they are selfish decisions. They are not necessarily, I think the guilt plays a factor, but I also think that you're right, Edie, that it is a selfish decision for what he needs, what he's desperate to prevent and save. And I think that
that's
if you're in
cool.
defiance of law,
I like your selfish read, Daryl, because at the beginning he wants to prove to Palpatine that
I'm strong.
Good for him, and now at the end, his selfishness is that it could be the plague by guilt, but more importantly, he wants to learn the lessons from Darth Plagueis of what are these life, sustaining things. Although I do want to point one quick little thing out, which is that I don't know how much in the courts they would have had Palpatine on, but being a Sith is directly, like, it's a mortal, like, existential enemy of the Jedi, and they're the ones who are in charge of ridding him of.
So it would have been a trial with the Jedi, not with the Senate, you think?
I don't know.
I mean, who actually had control of him at that point? It was the Jedi.
It could be when Mace Windu says he has too much control of the Senate and the courts, meaning maybe they wouldn't be trying him in their rules, or they would be using their rules and basically tying the hands of the Jedi.
Wow, this sounds so much like, as I just blanked on the prison in Cuba.
Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah. Are we going to try them in New York, or are we going to try them in the military court?
Yeah. And Palpatine would probably get away if he were tried in the courts, but Mace Windu is saying we got to just rid him now, and we'll get rid of the Sith from our midst.
This version, yeah.
This is actually something I never considered, but it's actually amazing in thinking about it, because I don't think I gave George Lucas enough credit, of Palpatine's subtle emotional manipulation. Like at the same time, kind of like so many contradictory things he does to undermine the Jedi way. Like, for example, he says, "Oh, the Jedi are too simple. You need the wider, more sophisticated view." But then he goes, "Oh, the Jedi are too complex. One master, one apprentice. Simple, easy."
Yeah. You're right. We don't give George Lucas enough credit.
Other than as a director, just saying.
As a director, he wasn't so good. That's another story. Okay. All right. So here I went back to Mishnah Sanhedrin. We talked earlier in the 7th chapter of Mishnah Sanhedrin as far as how do we kill people. We have 4 different ways. And here, I'm not going to go into all this text, but the basic idea, going back to your question way at the beginning, Edie, about judicial versus extrajudicial, both capital cases and non-capital cases require examination and inquiry, and yada, yada, yada. We have all this whole, basically there's a process. That's ultimately the thing, and there's a lot more discussion of.
Well, who can be a witness? I mean, that whole, who could even testify one way or the other? That's what makes this so amazing.
Right, we have all the witnesses stuff, and then we also have what about Adim Zoamim, right? These false witnesses, and then what sort of, there's lots of, but basically the idea is the sense of not doing things extrajudiciously, but there is a particular system, and there are certain ways that we handle all of this. Okay.
There's a system, there's a code, there's prescribed societal behavior, and we need to follow those steps. And them not being followed, in the case of Star Wars, leads to all kinds of problems.
Breakage.
Yes. Which is interesting because at the end, right, Anakin wants to save Palpatine. He wants to do the process, but that was the wrong move because Palpatine is corrupting. But interestingly, if Anakin had followed the process at the beginning and not killed Dooku on Palpatine's orders, they could have discovered that Dooku would have given Palpatine up, possibly. Or at least maybe said Darth Sidious, but who knows who. Although it is funny because if you go back to Attack of the Clones, when there's this conversation with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and literally Dooku says, there's a Sith Lord, being a puppet master within Coruscant, and Obi-Wan, he's literally telling him 100% the truth, and Obi-Wan just can't believe it, and doesn't even pursue that, which is bad. All right, final one.
A whole different timeline of movies right there.
Yeah. Final one, which is heartbreak. I didn't have a really good one for this. She's dying. Well, we don't know why. She's lost the will to live. We need to operate quickly if we were to save the babies. Babies? She's carrying twins. Save them. We must. They are our last hope. And then I didn't have a really good thing. I was trying to look for people dying, whether in the Bible or Talmud, for people from dying from heartbreak. But I went the Psalms route. Thank you, Stevie, for the shout out to Psalms 90 earlier on. Here's Psalm 69:21. Cherpa shavar libi vanusha va'akeva lanud va'ayin nachamim below masasi. So reproach breaks my heart. I am in despair. I hope for consolation, but there's none, etc. So it's not the best. I'm just going to end on that quasi-poetic line from Psalms as opposed to a specific instance of someone actually dying from heartbreak, whether Bible or Talmud, but that's what we have. And but that's how we get to Darth Vader becoming a father, right? And it's Father's Day. Thank you. Even though he doesn't know it. By the way, he doesn't know it. So
he doesn't know, right? Well, he knows she's
Vader
pregnant.
doesn't know that because Vader just once Padme's dead, that's it. Like she's, out of sight. She's dead. It's only when does he? So if you're wondering, in Empire Strikes Back, he knows that he's Luke's father. What's the connection? So how does he find out? And how does he not know during the Battle of Yavin, right? Because he's trying to shoot Luke down. And this is later on in 2015, I'm pretty sure. I think I want to say Darth Vader comic number 6, something along those lines. He basically hires bounty hunters to go track down different things and ultimately finds out that he has a son, right? He doesn't know that they were twins, but he finds out he has a son. And that's how, when Empire Strikes Back comes around, he knows Luke's his son, and he tells him. It also explains why he never tracked him down before Empire Strikes Back. Right, and all that time.
He was busy.
He was busy. He also didn't know. He didn't know he had a kid at all.
No, he knew that there was a chance, surely. I mean, go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, I was just like, he knew she was pregnant. So.
But once she died.
But he would have felt her dying, I think, which he said, which is like the inkling. See, I think that little inkling that we get where he's like, she can't be, I would have felt it, is kind of where like maybe he always had that little seed so that later when Luke reveals himself and like the whole scene where Vader's turning back, like maybe it was because that little seed had been buried if he was like, you know what, I would have felt her being dead. Maybe she survived, and then he finds out that yes, she did.
He says that?
Or some part of her.
I need to go back and see what happens, but I'm pretty sure he asked Palpatine, like, did she survive? And that's when he says no.
Well, because he says, "Where's Padme?" And Palpatine says like, "Oh, you killed her," and something like, "I couldn't have, I wouldn't have, I would have felt her," or like literally would have felt her, like dying, or that he would have felt her loss or whatever.
Like there's some kind of a linkage there, and the fact that there were babies meant that the linkage wasn't completely gone.
Well, maybe he didn't feel much because he was so badly wounded and damaged that he was more focused on the focus pain when she died. But then once he finds out she died, he probably assumes that the children died with her. Probably doesn't realize that they were born before that, especially if he's believing Palpatine that he killed her at the fight when she collapsed after being choked. If he believes that's the point of death. But I mean, that is making a little bit of a jump to make it work. To buy into it, but
Palpatine also has incentive to make sure that he doesn't think he has anything outside of his task.
Absolutely,
knowing he has a kid leaves him right. So Palpatine is like, yeah, don't worry about it. We got work to do.
They're all gone.
Don't worry about them.
Here's this new task.
That's
Go
over.
do this.
Yeah, do this. And actually, I actually think that Palpatine is not happy when Luke comes into the picture. Luke has to be destroyed, but Palpatine is not like, oh great, I have a new apprentice now. Palpatine is like, things are fine. This has to be dealt with, but I would rather it not have happened because it screws up my plan.
And it's Vader who brings up the possibility of turning him. Now, we all know Palpatine manipulates, so maybe he wanted him to bring it up, but it is Vader who first introduces the idea of turning Luke instead of just killing him or dealing with him some other way.
Stevie, did you have your hand up?
No, not this time.
Stevie, not Edie.
Oh, it was on a different topic.
We can go back.
Oh, okay. It was I think your Psalm quote is good, but just because it's Father's Day, and when my brother became a father, he named his firstborn Choni. I felt like the story of Choni, which ends tragically with this, Ocharuta Omituta, right? Like, companionship or death. right? He gets displaced in time and, you know, winds up being useless and.
By the way, Stevie, for those less familiar with this Choni Hamagel, the Choni the Circle Maker, so it's basically the Talmudic Rip Van Winkle story. That this guy Choni, he basically can pray to God and ask for rain, right? A town is experiencing a drought, he can pray and adjust the levels of the rain getting to that town so they can have good agriculture. So eventually he sleeps, wakes up 70 years later, and so he's like, wait a second, nobody knows who I am. They think that I'm dead, right? So it's the Talmudic Rip and just context of Stevie. Yeah. Oh, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No.
It was the give me chavruta or mituta piece.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not romantic heartbreak, but it came to mind partially because it's Father's Day and, you know, it's got a family connection.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah, a little bit of a heartbreak piece. Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, especially because the carob tree that he fell asleep under wasn't for the man who was planting it, it was for the man's grandson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So someone he didn't exactly have. Funny.
Yeah, but passing it down for generations. All right, Stuart, this was great. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a happy rest of your Father's Day. And we have finished the prequel trilogy. We are midway now. We're 6 out of 12 done with this series. And next week, we're doing the Clone Wars, the theatrical version. Thank you so much, everybody. May the Force be with you.